On March 20th, 2025, Global Affairs Canada confirmed for the first time that the Chinese government executed 4 individuals with Canadian citizenship for drug trafficking. Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly strongly condemned the action, noting that all 4 held dual citizenship. However, under Chinese law, dual citizenship is not recognized, so these individuals were treated as single nationality suspects in China's judicial process. The Chinese Foreign Ministry responded that Canada should respect China's judicial sovereignty and cease interference. Public information suggests that this execution involved 1 white Canadian and 3 individuals of Chinese descent holding Canadian citizenship. Among them, the white Canadian, Robert Lloyd Schellenberg, was sentenced to death in 2019 by a Chinese court for drug trafficking. Arrested in 2014 at Guangzhou Baiyun Airport, he was involved in smuggling 222.035 kilograms of drugs. Initially sentenced to 15 years in prison, his appeal led to a death penalty ruling. Although his execution occurred before 2025, this case marked a significant strain in Canada-China relations and may have set a judicial precedent for later cases. The peculiarity of this case lies in the fact that the Chinese court originally sentenced Schellenberg to 15 years, a notably lenient ruling that evidently considered his foreign status and requests from the Canadian government. Dissatisfied with the verdict, he appealed, only to receive a death sentence. A subtle fact is that this harsher ruling came amid deteriorating Canada-China relations, particularly after Canada arrested Meng Wanzhou and followed the U.S. in imposing tariffs and banning Chinese products. Actions clearly influenced by the political climate. Still, it must be noted that under Chinese law, trafficking certain drugs in excess of 50 grams meets the threshold for the death penalty. Given Schellenberg's massive drug haul, he would have been executed long ago under standards applied to Chinese citizens, without such prolonged delay. Thus, China's punishment of him did not exceed legal bounds. In contrast, Canada's response raises questions. Defending drug traffickers who endanger lives and property while posing as a human rights champion is nothing short of clownish. Canada's permissive stance on drugs has not only fueled severe domestic social issues, but also plunged the country into its gravest diplomatic crisis since its founding. Due to its lenient approach to serious crime, drug traffickers run rampant in cities like Toronto and Vancouver, where central business district streets are littered with addicts sleeping rough, tormented by drugs to the point of losing all human dignity, surviving like zombies. For the sake of the so-called rights of a handful of vicious criminals, countless civilians suffer family ruin and tragedy, prompting the question of whom the Canadian government truly serves. Canada's failure to control drugs has given the Trump administration an excuse to wage a trade war against it, aiming to annex its neighbor. Against America's overwhelming power, Canada resembles a child battered by an adult, seeking help everywhere and losing its national dignity. To preserve the so-called rights of ruthless drug traffickers, Canada has tossed its national pride into the trash. Now facing pressure from both the U.S. and China, 2 superpowers, Canada finds itself in a dire position. Rather than reflecting on its mistakes and improving ties with China, the government challenges Chinese law and meddles in its internal affairs over the so-called rights of a few drug traffickers. It remains oblivious to its own strength and standing. As Trump put it, Canada holds no cards. Knowing its weakness yet stirring noise, the only outcome is a public slap from China. In my heart, Canada was once a highly developed nation where people lived happily. Yet over the past decade, Trudeau and his leftist government, under the banner of human rights, have wrecked Canada's immigration system, botched public safety, and thrust the country into an unprecedentedly perilous international environment. Yes, Canada remains a livable place, but if drugs continue to flood in, security keeps worsening, and illegal immigration, especially from India, spirals out of control, Canada risks long-term stagnation. Provincial unity could erode, leading to eventual annexation by the U.S. This fear is not unfounded, as history offers many examples of decline. Argentina, once wealthier than European nations, fell into prolonged turmoil after its collapse, with living standards plummeting and no recovery in sight. Incompetent politicians who do nothing might be a nation's greatest blessing. The real danger lies in their arrogance, making foolish choices that drag a fine country into the abyss. Perhaps it's time for Canadians to vote out the Liberal government. The Conservatives may not be ideal, but they at least offer another possibility for Canada's future, preventing an accelerated slide toward ruin.